The guns of the Sligs are perhaps a good example of one of the many real-world objects Oddworld skewers into its own form, I think simply to showcase how odd this world truly is. The information about the Sligs guns is quite patchy, but then probably most information about Oddworld is, so it's still worth recounting all of it arguably. The standard issue weapon used by the Sligs is an assault rifle that has generally been accepted to be called the Blunderbuss. Though I don't currently know of a source as to where this name came from, it's just something that Oddworld fans have been doing for as long as I remember, and considering there isn't an alternative, it's just sort of accepted that it's called the Blunderbuss. In our world, the blunderbuss is an old weapon, like from the 1700s and all that, and is described by Wikipedia because I can't be bothered explaining it myself, only because I wouldn't do as good a job at describing it in my own words. I'd probably call it that gun that looks like a trumpet or something. As a firearm with a short, large caliber barrel, which is flared at the muzzle, and frequently throughout the entire bore, and used with shot and other projectiles of relevant quantity or caliber. Very unlike the Slig gun, the real-world version bears a much more striking similarity to the weapon used by Blister's booty in Oddworld Stranger's Wrath. And speaking of which, when trying to find a picture of him, please do not just go on Google Images and type in Blister's booty, just trust me on this. Despite carrying the name, the Slig blunderbusses resemble shotguns. Specifically from what I saw, I think they took inspiration from various forms of the Winchester Model 1200 and 1300s, primarily from the Police and Defender variants. The Slig's gun itself, however, of course fires as a machine gun very rapidly, stopping after a few seconds of constant fire to reload, or whatever it is the Sligs are doing there. It's also interesting that they take a step back in order to do this. I think that's just a protection thing or something. While they're unable to shoot, take a step back to reduce the distance between themselves and a threat while they can't defend themselves. Though interestingly, I noticed that if they're unable to step back any further, they also don't reload. So maybe it isn't them reloading and it's just a general precautionary measure, like if you've got to fire that consistently there's probably an enemy coming at you, so take a step back every few shots to reduce the distance and protect yourself. I guess there's an argument to say that it can't really be reloading though, because as long as they don't hold their fire constantly, and if they fire in short bursts, they appear to be able to fire as many bullets as they want without doing that thing. Now really it was probably just that it wasn't really something worth putting into the games and it doesn't really matter, but it's still interesting to note. However, unless I'm recalling incorrectly, the Sligs don't need to do that reloading thing in Munch's Oddysee and can just fire continuously without stopping. And they seem to be using guns that at least look the same in that game as well, so they're likely meant to be using the same weapons. Upon trying it out, I found that possessed Sligs can fire non-stop, but enemy Sligs do stop to reload, which is quite interesting. Again, all this stuff I'm nitpicking here, it's all almost certainly just gameplay reasons that weren't that important to think about. I just like to bring it up because there's not exactly a lot to go on in terms of Oddworld lore like this, so it's sort of interesting to apply these sorts of gameplay mechanics to the lore. These guns in Munch's Oddysee are now a lot less effective, taking many shots to kill the player as opposed to the one-shot kill they were in Oddworld Abe's Oddysee and Oddworld Abe's Exodus. And yes, this is almost certainly yet another thing that's due to gameplay reasons. Another thing that's interesting to note is that in Munch's Oddysee, their bullets now appear to have that thing that I can't remember what it's called. I didn't explain it very well, but hopefully you get what I mean. I think it's called bullet tracing or something. Again, it's almost certainly just a gameplay element to make it more noticeable when you're being shot at in the 3D universe. So that's why this gun is pretty interesting and why I think it's sort of representing the oddness of Oddworld. It's a weapon that's called the Blunderbuss, looks like a shotgun but fires like a machine gun. It's pretty wacky come to think of it. The Sligs of course have used other weapons with concept art showing them using things like this massive gun and this tank, and of course you've got the grenades used by the flying Sligs, and also the flying Sligs in Soulstorm have been shown to have these massive minigun. But I'd like to move on to the Blitz Packer. The Blitz Packer is a heavy machine gun that for some reason fires cans of Soulstorm brew. Why they thought that'd be more effective than bullets I'm not sure, but apparently in Oddworld it is, as it's apparently the most powerful gun in the game, and also I think the most rapid fire gun that the Sligs have ever used. Actually, interjection here. I remember reading years ago, I'm pretty sure it was on the Oddworld wiki, that this Slig here in Munch's Oddysee, this specific Slig and only this Slig, as well as all his replacements that drop from the same machine if he's killed, who appears to be using a standard blunderbuss weapon, actually has more power in his gun and is way more rapid fire than even a Blitz Packer. To compare it, I possessed one of the enemy Sligs that you're meant to fight with the, let's call him the Super Slig. And as you can see, his gun is way slower than Super Slig's. And I accidentally get killed very easily by Super Slig. It is possible that the Slig I possessed was already injured though, because I was fighting them earlier. So yeah, that's an interesting fact. I don't really get why they made Super Slig have this really powerful weapon. I guess they thought this part would be too hard if he had just a standard Slig gun. In my opinion, I don't think it would have been too hard, and even if it was, you can just keep possessing his replacements, so I don't get what the problem is. And it's interesting that they chose to give him the standard Slig weapon but make it overpowered, rather than give him a Blitz Packer for example, or put a Blitz Packer machine in the area so you can choose to get it if you want to. I could be wrong, but if I recall correctly, I believe he's literally the only Slig in the game to have this really powerful Blunderbuss variant. So it's really quite special, and quietly so as well. There's nothing in the game that says he's special, he just is for whatever reason. So I'm going to name Super Slig as the first member of my Slig Wall of Fame. But yeah, that's just something I found interesting anyway. Now back to the Blitz Packer. These were so heavy that they were primarily used by Sligs on steroids, big bros. However, normal Sligs were still capable of carrying them and using them. It just looked rather silly doing so in my opinion, because the gun is nearly the same size as them. From what I can tell, the concept of a Blitz Packer is that, much like a lot of things in Oddworld, it was created as one thing but went wrong and has been repurposed. I think it was originally meant to be like a fast way to deliver Soulstorm Brew and get it into customers' mouths as fast as possible, but I assume the industrialists realised eventually that this was highly dangerous and that it was deadly, and so typical gluckons that wanted it to go to waste, it got turned into a highly effective weapon instead. So that's basically a bit of information that I found quite interesting about the guns of the Sligs.
Hello, follow me.